Well, this is a Poprika special episode. I think this is like special episode 3 or 4, something like that. We've done these things before. We did an all Star Wars and an all James Bond. This is an all MCU episode. You know who I am, and I'm joined by 3 guests. Let's work our way counterclockwise around the table. Mr. Jackson, what's going on, sir?
Hey, man, just, test your mic trivia champion. Back in the building again, man.
When we say milk that superlative for all this word.
All day.
Yeah, sooner or later, you're going to fill up the punch card and you're just going to have to get rid of it.
It's going to be on my tombstone.
I feel bad for the day that you come along and you lose the test your mic trivia. We'll put you on suicide watch that day.
It'll be nice when that day comes, won't it?
Nice. And who is directly across the table from me?
It is Brian Martin.
All right, then. Yes, it is.
Filling the seat of Leslie Ellsworth is Brian Martin.
Well, Leslie, your balls dropped apparently.
Hey, how you doing?
Man, you're better than Gary Oldman.
We 3 will be your hosts for this new season of Poprika moving forward. But before we get into any of that, we have a special guest with us, a person who's never been heard before on the Poprika Network. Please explain yourself, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Brandy. Not sure exactly what to explain about me. I'm a massive nerd. I guess my biggest claim to fame is that I'm a cosplayer and I'm part of Convicts Cosplay.
Very nice.
So.
Yeah, excellent. And you are, when I asked you to do this show, you responded not with a yes, but with an all caps resounding hell yes.
I sure did.
You a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I am. I'm a fan of Marvel. I've been reading Marvel comics since way before it was cool. Since growing up, Spider-Man was definitely my first introduction into Marvel. But I knew who Iron Man was before the movie came out, so everyone was like asking me all these questions. So I've always felt kind of cool. Like,
you're already in
Man.
You're already in the first percentile of fans then. Iron Man was such an unknown property. Yeah, they were like, this movie's gonna blow, guys.
he was deep cuts.
Deep cuts. Yeah, shit. Back in the days,
Hard
Captain America and Thor were deep cuts.
Yeah,
too. That's what happens when you
it
go
was
bankrupt.
basically anybody who wasn't Wolverine. Or Ghost Rider.
Spider-Man, maybe.
Yeah, Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, because people had tattoos.
Wait, people have Ghost Rider tattoos?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Wait, it's like Nick Cage's face on fire.
That's a great idea, though.
Is it?
Putting Nick Cage on fire?
So what we're doing here is this is going to be an all Marvel Cinematic Universe related show leading up to Avengers Endgame, which is what, the 22nd? Movie
22, I believe.
Yeah,
yes.
it's the big number 22 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
They've almost caught up to James Bond. Can we
real quick?
Yeah.
James Bond started like 61 or something like
granted,
that.
they haven't been doing 3 Bond movies a year, so I mean,
they did. There was a 1.0 where there's 2 Roger Moore movies in the same calendar year.
Jeez,
which is absolutely ridiculous. Like they wrapped filming on one. He went home and showered and came
just
back.
Just a bunch of B-reel footage from Moonraker.
Oh, I don't talk about that show. So yeah, let's get into it, man. We're just gonna throw out a couple questions and just get deep in the weeds of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Let's go around, man. Mr. Jackson, what are your top 3 Marvel Cinematic movies, man? What do you hold in the high esteem?
And it hasn't even changed in a couple of years now. My number 1 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
That was the game changer for me. I think that was the point for me when the MCU just kicked it into high gear. The Phase 1 stuff was decent. Then you go into like Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, whatever. But Winter Soldier, I was like, man, this is my jam right here.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the original Avengers.
Oh, okay.
That was one of those things that was just unheard of for movies, like to create a franchise of
franchises.
Yeah, of franchises and have them all come together, Like it on paper it wasn't supposed to work, and it worked masterfully.
Yeah.
And my number 3 is Captain America: Civil War.
Okay.
And, yeah, that was it. It was it was epic on not necessarily on the level of say an Infinity War, but it was on an emotional level kind of epic as far as what was going on with all the characters in the MCU at the time.
I dig it. What about you, Mr. Martin?
I'd be inclined to go in reverse order, but I don't really think it matters because when you get into the top 3, it's like they're all really
interchangeable,
really good. Winter Soldier, also my number 1. It's just everything I ever wanted. My favorite moment in the movie, probably that just tickled me more than anything else, was the Arnim Zola scene, the Arnim Zola info drop scene.
Wait, they did it? Because
I was
did
like,
it?
oh
They
my
made it
god!
work.
As soon as I saw that camera moving, I was like, shit, I know what's going to happen here, and I was so excited about it. Number 2, probably Black Panther. Just pound for pound, one of the best movies just in general they've put out. But 3 would probably be the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie for a lot of the same reasons, because I think it's just an outstanding crowd-pleasing movie that is just infinitely watchable and quotable.
Yeah, I think like the on paper wasn't supposed to work for me was Guardians, and I was like, oh, this might be the first slip up right
Talking
here.
tree, man.
I was like,
Talking
I
tree,
don't
talking
think-
raccoon.
They got a little too big for the bridges, and sure enough, they pulled it off.
Guardians and Black Panther are actually in my top 5. So
Yeah.
What about you, Brandy?
Well, some of mine are similar. One that I have that's not had been mentioned is Iron Man. I really loved it because I think it did such a great job of kicking this off, especially since we didn't know where it was going. And it definitely brought a lot of fans into Marvel. I also like that it's both dramatic, it has a lot of serious moments, but it's also really funny.
Yeah. I think it gets overlooked a lot now just by virtue of the fact that it's old and it seems relatively quaint by comparison. Like if you put Iron Man up against Infinity War, it's like, oh, well, aren't you precious? You know? But it really laid a lot of groundwork.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably the best Iron Man movie, right?
Yeah,
Definitely, yeah.
Easily.
There's no probably about
So
It was, and it's always a joy like watching Robert Downey Jr. be Tony Stark. It's
yeah.
I think it set
absolutely.
the tone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And considering they improv a good bit of that movie, I think I'm super
As opposed
surprised
to 2, which I think they improv the entire thing. I was like,
Oh,
please
Sam
stop
Rockwell
talking.
had to have been
Please
doing
stop
improv.
talking. He was the best part of the movie.
Yes.
What else are your other 2 that you got in there?
So I've got Winter Soldier. For a lot of the same reasons. It was like what really kicked off the rest of the MCU. Like Iron Man laid the groundwork, but Winter Soldier told us where it was going. I also just really like the relationship between Steve and Bucky in that movie. It really built it on what we already had in the Avengers. I'm a major Stucky fan, so.
I didn't know I had a name for that.
There's a name for everything.
Stucky, that sounds gross.
If you dig around on the internet, you
I
will
don't want
find
to
it.
dig anywhere with
Dig
Stucky.
around, you'll find Stucky.
Stop.
And the third one is Civil War.
Okay, right on. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Damn, you guys already mentioned mine. At the top of the list for me is The Winter Soldier. That's the movie. Look, I was not a Captain America fan, nor am I a Superman fan. They're both boring, bland, and whack to me.
Oh, man. Oh,
Sad.
jeez, boy. What's
Yeah.
buckle up,
I'm
folks.
I'm not a big fan of the always high moral. We have to do what's right, guy. Those guys.
But he has
irked
pretty
me in
blue
real
eyes.
life. And well, that's Chris Evans. Yes, Captain America. I couldn't really care less about. Like if I worked at Shield, I'd be like, "Those fucking clowns in the office again, just being all righteous and whatnot." But this is the movie that I'm not gonna say made me a Cap fan, but I was like, okay, all right, he's tall. Captain America's tolerable now.
Number 1.
What is your number one movie? Your number one movie? Yeah.
You know what? Maybe go from a guy I couldn't care about to a guy I think is tolerable now.
It's a big hit.
2, Civil War, just because for the longest that was my favorite big event story was Civil War. And however they get to the fighting, whether it's blowing up the school in Stanford or blowing up where were they at, Laos or wherever they were,
Lagos.
Lagos, yeah, Lagos. I love that story, and everybody jokes it is Avengers 2.5, and okay, yeah,
Sure. What's wrong with
Who
that?
cares?
and everybody gets a little bit of time to shine. We get a little bit of Panther. You get Hawkeye coming out of retirement,
But
all
it's
that good
still
stuff.
Cap and Bucky's story, and it's another one of those movies that should not have worked
Yeah.
as well as it did. Because every time, and they're like, "Oh, and Spider-Man," and we're like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Stop it. This is just too much. You put Aunt May in our Captain America movie now, and then I was
worked.
like, "Hell yeah, they
Hell
put
yeah,
Aunt
you
May
put
in there."
And then Infinity War for me it tops my number 3, just because no one knew what to expect, and so the first time I saw it, because the music is all somber at the very end or whatever, then the lights came on and just the theater was dead quiet, and the first thing I heard was the dude happened to be in my row, and he was 2 seats down, and he'd look over his butt, and he's like, what the fuck just happened? And I was like, that's what they were going for. That's what they were trying to invoke.
I remember, that first time seeing it, and I don't think it really set in for everybody until they saw those title credits at the end go to Ash. Mm-hmm. That's when they was like, oh man, that's real.
Yeah, like that was way to rub it in.
Yeah.
So now we got our top threes established, man. Let's talk about some of our favorite characters in the MCU. Who are some of your favorite characters out there? Like when they're on the screen, you sit up a little bit straighter, or they're announced they're coming up in this movie, and you're like, fuck yeah. For me, it's Tony. Tony is my favorite character. I will defend that poor bastard until the very end because nobody respects that man. No, he's got a purpose. He's got a mission. He's trying to save everybody, damn it, and everybody just shits on him all day long. I understand Tony where he's coming from. Who are some of your favorite characters, or your number one?
My number one is Steve, which is I think really funny that that's coming after Tony.
Yeah. It's true.
But I like Steve's story. I like where he came from. I know you think that he's like high and mighty and righteous.
Yeah, old highfalutin ass.
He is, but I think it's based in a part of like trying to take care of everyone.
Yeah.
His focus is on outside and not always on inside, on like his interior. And I think that came out a lot in Avengers when we saw some of the moments of him going through like depression and kind of dealing with the fact that, he didn't really fit into this modern world. Yeah. And I think the movies did a disservice in not exploring that past Avengers, with the exception of like Peggy's death in Civil War.
Yeah, man, that gave me some feelings right there. Yeah, I thought Whedon did a real good job in Avengers of placing him as the man at a time, never getting all the pop culture references. And then to a smaller extent,
I got that one.
In the Winter Soldier, he's got that little book of, I should check this out. Well, let me add Marvin Gaye to the list. And you see like Star Trek /Wars is in there and crossed off. And also the fact that in every different country, that book is in a different language is the little detail.
They have different little things in each country that like are unique to that. Like,
yeah. So somewhere, I guess Steve was like, Akira Kurosawa. Okay, I guess like I'll check him out.
In Austria, he listened to Falco music.
So Steve, that's the one you identified with.
I like Steve. I also like Peggy Carter. I know that she's been, sort of a backseat character throughout. She had a cameo in Ant-Man, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I love that. Anytime she shows up, is they find neat ways to kind of get her in there, and I feel the same way about Howard Stark. Like showing up at places where I don't necessarily anticipate them showing up. I always get tickled by that.
Yeah, I wish that Agent Carter show ran for
Me too.
far longer than it did.
Oh, it deserved more than what it got.
God, that was a stylish show.
And there's
too,
also the theory that it that was like her remembering from like Avengers until she died in Civil War, because the show ended right before Civil War. So it's like her remembering her life before she passed away, and that's why the show ended.
Oh, that man! Come on, man. Brian, what you got for favorite characters?
Oh man, well, I mean, I generally say
Groot.
Steve.
Oh, okay.
But I actually no, I was gonna go probably Rocket.
Okay.
I think Rocket is sort of he appears to be simpler than he actually is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot kind of going on under the surface, and I don't really think Guardians 2 dug into it too much, but there's a lot of subtle moments with him in the first Guardians that sort of betray his sort of origins and the type of guy he really is.
Yeah.
That being said, when he's like, I'm going to get that arm, or one of the lines I always laugh at is writhe little man in the first one.
When he shoots them,
writhe little man. And when they're in the prison in the first Guardian, and he's like, oh, we're getting out of here. Like, it's no question. It's matter of fact. Like, he's just endlessly entertaining.
Yeah.
Love that guy.
But why Cap for you?
For a lot of the same reasons. I don't know. He's just he's a guy he's an idealist who finds himself in a world that is completely at odds with what he believes it should be.
Yeah.
And he sticks to his guns, and it's a lonely fight. And one of my favorite Cap scenes is kind of going back to what you said a second ago, the scene in Winter Soldier where he visits Peggy and she's just on a loop forgetting over and over and over again that he's back. But he does this all the time to himself. And like he's just trying to relive something and make a connection anywhere he can. And that's why he's so connected to Bucky. That's why he fights so hard for him. But I love that about him.
All right.
It's not about like pretty boy altruism, and more about just knowing what you need and doing whatever it takes to actualize it.
All right, I can dig that. Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, it's going to be a hat trick here. I'm Team Cap, man. Team Cap.
God,
Yeah.
Everyone but you.
I'm a
He was-
Tony in a room full of Caps. This is terrible.
He's that character that just, I mean, he resonates with me. He's like,
you're
he's-
wearing a Captain America shirt. so
I am
it's
actually. Yeah.
I am also
That was
wearing
unintentional.
One. It's just underneath the hoodie.
Oh, you're wearing a Winter Soldier cap. Okay.
Yeah, he's the ultimate badass. He's just the against all odds guy. Like he will go forward in situations where he knows he's clearly outclassed and will just keep going forward steady.
Okay.
Like Thanos. Like the dude held back Thanos.
Yeah.
That should not have happened, but he was
All right.
like Civil War, like when get to that point where Tony Stark's figured him out and he's beating the crap out of him, and he gets up defiant and is like, I can do this all day. Like that resolve is just like it's something else with him.
All right, then. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And yet honorable mentions, obviously, like I'm obviously a Sam Jackson fan, so Nick
Yeah,
Fury,
yeah.
He's a badass.
He's
man.
great.
It's just
I think we need more of Nicholas J. Fury.
that he got his moment to shine in Winter Soldier with that with the car chase scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
he
you
did.
better
Yeah,
keep
he did.
both eyes open. Was my favorite moment
no,
from.
I was like, that's a
Get me
little
off the
cheap.
grid.
Well, I mean,
He's great.
question 3 was Team Cap or Team Tony, but I'm just gonna skip that question.
You know,
Yeah,
I don't think we
we
need to,
wa-
because here's the thing. I would like to talk about that for a second, because
Okay.
I think it's a much harder question when it comes to the movies, because I think Tony's not wrong. Like
damn straight, he's not wrong.
he's not wrong. Everything he was afraid of has happened, and by the end of Infinity War, that's where we're at. And it's I don't know that there's anything he necessarily could have done to stop it, but he keeps trying to stop it.
It's
Yeah, that's what I feel like. People call Tony the villain of the MCU or whatever. I think
I think he's
No.
more.
No.
He was more the realist.
He was the villain of the or the Marvel universe, the 616 universe, for a while, because he absolutely was the villain of Civil War.
Yeah.
The comic book.
yes, I
So-
agree with Cap in the
very much
comics.
so.
Yeah, and I mean, I challenge anybody to side with Tony because the portrayal in Civil War begs that you side with Cap.
I have friends that sided with Tony in that comic.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, because I think that's a difference between the comics and the movies, because that's also my favorite comic arc.
Yeah.
He's a lot more sympathetic in the comics than he was made out to be in the movie.
Yeah.
So that's always a complaint I've had about that movie, despite it being one of my favorites. So I think it's really interesting that Infinity War has kind of brought that back to where you can be sympathetic to him
Yeah.
in Civil War and his position.
I would say, yeah, he the whole Ultron thing, which he cops to in Civil War. He's like, that was on me. But even that was coming from a place of good. He knew what was up there in space, and he was actively trying to do something to protect everybody. Now,
Well, not even so much protect. He doesn't want to do that never-ending crusade thing. He wants to end it.
Yeah.
He wants to end this.
he wants to still have a life.
But at this point, I don't know that he actually does. I mean, he wants to keep building suits. He
Right.
wants to keep flying around with them, but maybe just do birthday parties.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he says in Iron Man 3. He's like, what I do, I tinker. That's what I know. That's
Yeah.
why I think Tony would never not tinker, even if the world wasn't in a crisis. He'd
Right.
still
There's no point at which he stops doing that thing. But honestly, there's no point at which Cap stops doing that thing unless, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Tony gets a lot of undeserved hate and shat on way more often than he needs to be. Man's trying to help save the universe. Damn it.
I agree. And I think by the end of Civil War, the movie, once Stan Lee comes in and says, "Is there a Tony stank?" the audience is back on Tony's side. Yeah. They're like, all right, it's all forgiven.
Oh, rascally
You big
Tony.
lug.
Yeah, and the man saw Bucky fucking choke his mom out to death. I mean, I'm going to react how you react.
Yeah, and his friend knew
Really
about
justified.
it.
Yeah, and his buddy knew about it and didn't say anything. Yeah, Cap's a dick for that, by the way. Terrible. Absolutely.
I'm not saying
terrible.
you're wrong.
All right, so Disney now owns everything, including our souls
And all my money.
and all of our money. So now they have their hands on, as far as I can tell, every character but 2. They don't outright own Hulk. They don't outright own Namor, the Submariner.
That's a shame.
It is a shame. But they do have the Fox properties back. Of the Fox properties, which is the first one you guys want to see introduced into the MCU?
I'm a little biased in this, so I got to say Fantastic Four.
Okay. I feel like it's the easiest one.
Yeah, it's the easiest one. It seems like the way the MCU has been progressing. They've been going cosmic, and what's more cosmic than Fantastic Four? And there's so many other things you can explore with that, the Negative Zone, and of course, Doom, Annihilus. You can go to space. Well, they already introduced the Skrulls, so you can dip further into that. Like, it's crazy how many characters, and some of them, reside in the MCU, made their first appearances in Fantastic Four. It's nuts.
Yeah, the first.
I want to see an adaptation of that story. I think it's like the second issue of Fantastic Four where they convinced the Skrulls to turn into cows at the end.
Yeah.
and then years later they got eaten as hamburgers.
Yeah, I think they went mad. The people went mad.
Yeah,
or something like that.
And then like the people who ate them, that was the Skrull kill crew.
Yeah.
I think
the 60s.
I think Grant Morrison wrote that.
Yeah.
Like it was like the late 90s. It was Grant Morrison and
Mark Miller.
Mark Miller.
Yeah.
And they were like, "What if? Remember those cows?" Great idea. Great idea.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe
That's a Marvel one shot.
It took like 30 years to get there, but they got it. I kind of agree though. Like, Fantastic Four is like an easy shot because ain't nobody out there who's like consuming movies that feels any sort of kinship for these characters right now.
No.
And I think that we've introduced concepts like the quantum realm that could allow for what I would like to see, which is a period Fantastic Four movie where they disappear at the end into some sort of exploratory capacity and then eventually pop out in the modern day.
Hey, we're back. Where's half of everybody at?
And it won't matter. The technological advances won't matter because all of theirs will be better anyhow.
Yeah.
So they'll be like, well, that's really cute, but here's what I've got. But even more than that, I really want to see the Surfer again. I want to see the Silver Surfer back.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What about you, Brandy?
I was the same Fantastic Four. I feel like they need redemption, and if we can have 3 versions of Spider-Man, we can have 3 versions of the Fantastic Four.
Well, you're not wrong. You're not wrong in that capacity.
Not at all.
Bring back Chris Evans as the Torch.
The Torch.
And Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan as a Torch. Oh, Torch Wars.
Torch Wars.
Yes.
Sign me up for that. It's another Marvel one shot. For me, strangely enough, even though it's not my favorite character, Deadpool. Deadpool's the first one I want to see. If for no other reason, then I have a feeling that Endgame will end just as heavy as Infinity War ended. Like, I assume there's going to be some deaths in there, and we're going to need some time to process it. I would love Deadpool to come in there and bring things back up a little bit, add a little bit levity to the whole situation, throw a couple of the jokes in there, whatever the case may be. I think I'd pop in Deadpool real quick and be like, hey, we're here now, and then establish your Fantastic Fours. And no one wants X-Men first, huh? Straight for the. Is it because we've gotten such shitty Fantastic Four movies that's what you go to first?
Well, not only that, for me, I was like, they've already done like about a dozen X-Men movies, so
Okay.
I would rather them start with like a fresher property than maybe take their time with X-Men.
I also like most of the X-Men movies. I haven't liked any of the Fantastic Four movies.
It's a very good point. There are redeemable X-Men movies.
There are.
Yes.
I can think of 4, maybe 5 X-Men movies I liked.
Yeah, somewhere around
Yeah,
there.
it'd probably be
about
5.
half of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great
around
track
half.
record, Fox. Great track record. And speaking
Are we
of
counting
which,
Deadpool as an X-Men movie? Then maybe it's 6.
yeah, the X-Men, speaking of which, are back at home at Marvel. What would your starting 5 roster be for Marvel's X-Men movie?
Oh boy.
For me, it's a simple question because it's a no-brainer. You start at the beginning. You have Cyclops, Marvel Girl, Beast, Iceman, and Angel.
The original 5.
You're the original 5. I think you start, and then you build your team from there. And then maybe in the second movie, you add in a Storm or Wolverine, whatever the case may be.
I went a different direction because
Okay.
I went with 5 that had made appearances. I felt like in the movies, but I hadn't liked the way they were portrayed.
Okay.
So my 5 would be Kitty Pryde, Colossus, which I did like in the Deadpool movies, but I'd love to see him more in not the Deadpool movies, more in a serious role. Iceman, Jubilee, whom we've had basically had cameos, and then Rogue.
Yeah.
And she's not been explored since the original.
And then it wasn't really that well.
No.
No,
Yeah,
no,
that
no.
was,
no.
a
So what
real
was it? Run
disappointment.
that group down one more time.
Kitty,
Mm-hmm.
Colossus, Iceman,
Word.
Jubilee,
Okay.
and Rogue.
Okay.
So it's a kind of a weird
interesting
mix,
mix.
but
That's
I
an
feel
interesting
like
mix. Yeah.
it would make good stories
Yeah, definitely. I can get down with
because
that.
that's 5 dynamic characters that you sometimes see together, but not
Yeah, we
at the same time.
finally can put some real respect on Jubilee's name. We can finally see what those fireworks are talking about in the movie. I think the technology is finally there that we can do the Jubilee
think we can pull it off.
Yeah, we can pull it off. What about you, Brian? What would your 5 be?
Oh man, it would probably be Cyclops is like Mr. X-Men. Like I don't think you can pull X-Men off without Cyclops really. So Cyclops.
I mean the terrorist.
Well, I mean, yeah, whatever. He's Cyclops. Beast is always on my roster. I would probably go the Emma Frost route. And have her because that was always more interesting.
January
to
Jones.
Me. Yeah. And I would put Wolverine and probably Kitty Pryde on my team. That would probably be the roster I'd go with in the movie. Even though I am also of the mind that Wolverine we should just put out to pasture for a little while with those Skrull cows and let him just sit for a little while and just take him off the table. I'd really love to see Dazzler in a movie as well, but I wouldn't throw her right into the
roller
roster.
Skates and all in there. Dazzler, we did a Dazzler Jubilee team up movie.
Dazzler and Longshot are like my two. Like I
man.
Okay, all right.
You're not using them. Like as soon as we found out that which one was it, Apocalypse that took place in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a Dazzler.
And there was no Dazzler and there's no Longshot. I'm like, you've lost me. In such a profound way, movie.
If Suicide Squad hadn't scooped up Margot Robbie, I think there's your Dazzler right there.
There was even that rumor for a while that that Taylor Swift was going to appear.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad they didn't do Dazzler there.
Hey, she's really tall. I don't know, guys. Have you seen her?
It kind of would have made sense.
She's tall and shiny.
Yeah.
What about you, Jermone?
Okay. See, when I was putting my top 5 together, I was like, it was like one kind of led into the other, like, because I started with Cyclops, of course.
Yeah,
You
the
know.
wackest of the X.
Well, here's the thing, because like, you put Cyclops in, like story wise, automatically like it's gonna start a conflict, so you have to put Wolverine in there.
Okay.
And number one, and of course, Disney, like they're all about the money, so they're gonna put Wolverine in there.
Yeah.
Of course. And also that brought in Jean Grey.
Okay.
So that there you got the triangle right there. I chose Storm also. You need the representation and plus the potential Storm Black Panther down the line.
Word.
And I went with Nightcrawler as my 5th.
I love
He's
him.
just
That is
visually, I think he's like.
I love Nightcrawler.
It sounds like a
so
solid
much.
90s setup is what you got going on over there.
I was thinking because Gambit's my favorite X-Man, but I was like, maybe not now. Maybe down the line, because I couldn't see anywhere where he would fit in story-wise. Like
Everywhere is where he's
because I feel like if you do Gambit, you got to have Rogue, and like I would almost have him like eventually, like been trying to do it for years to do the solo movie, but he has his own backstory to where he can do he can hold his own.
I think he works
movie.
better solo. Anyway.
Yeah.
I never
Channing
buy
Tatum.
anybody who wants to spend time around him because he looks like he smells
He
like
looks
like,
sleazy as hell.
like 3 weeks of BO masked with a lot of Axe.
He
Gambit, huh?
really looks like that dude you don't leave your lady around, and not even because he'll take her. It's like because he's probably just very inappropriate.
We better get you tested for VDs. We didn't do anything. I know you
He's
were
like,
in the same room.
He looks like a walking Me Too movement.
absolutely horrible, all of you. I was going to say.
Every interaction with him is in fact a gambit.
Well played, sir.
Well done. All right then. So yeah, we got our Fantastic Four in, man. We got our X-Men and a shout out to Deadpool. So here's a hypothetical for you guys. Let's say you were in charge of Phase 4, because really, we only have rumors and suppositions as to what it is, and most of that rumor and suppositions is just sequels to other movies. Doctor Strange 2, Panther 2, Guardians 3. You know what the case is. What 4 properties that aren't already slated for a sequel would you guys want to see? What what Marvel properties would you guys want to see in there? The Black Widow movie, the only solo movie we know about, that notwithstanding. Jermone, let's kick it off with you, man.
Okay. I'm thinking, some of the obvious stuff I was thinking of coming out of Endgame. So obviously going to be a big void, after, some deaths or exits from the MCU. I was thinking, of course, the Thunderbolts. I think that would be a very interesting story to put out there, having this new team on the scene. And, of course, we know the big twist, but, the casual audience is going to be like, whoa, these guys are really villains in disguise?
Yeah.
It'll be like the snapping all over again. Like I'm sitting there, it's like, well, he's definitely winning at the end of this, right? And like the audience is like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
And that would be the same reaction they'd get with Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
If they remember who Zemo was.
Yeah.
That'll be the big trick.
I don't think they'll remember at that point though. Like, I mean, well, I think it's been long enough to where he's not really in the back of their minds anymore. So
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, holy, who the fuck? What? No way.
it's like, oh my god, it's him.
I think plot twists get people a lot more than we think they do. Like Captain Marvel, I was the only one that realized who the bad guys were at the beginning of the movie. And
Yeah.
it was so obvious to me because you had Ronan that kept popping up.
Yeah.
You knew Ronan was a bad guy.
We know Ronan's extremist.
See, the thing about it was, I was like, well, maybe Ronan, since everyone was already on that thought process, I was like, maybe he's actually kind of a chill dude, and we'll see what pushes him to being an extremist. No, he's just batshit crazy from
I
day
think
one.
he was a bigger asshole in Captain Marvel than he was in Cardigans. What a joke.
You got anybody else besides Thunderbolts?
I think coming out of of course with Spider-Man and probably obviously being inspired by Tony Stark and the Avengers and everything. A Champions movie would actually be pretty cool with some of the teenage.
Take Champions off my list.
There's that. Of course, Fantastic Four, obviously. Yeah. And I'd actually like to see another Thor movie, like another Taika Waititi Thor movie.
You're gonna go Thor 4.
Maybe Thor: The Last Asgardian or something like that.
Yeah, I
and
think
him
it
rebuilding.
took so long to get that series right.
Yeah.
It deserves like 2 more movies.
I just love. I loved Ragnarok so much. I was like, I want to see more of this.
Okay.
Like it took them a while to get it.
Yeah.
And when they did,
Yeah,
and
Thor.
Fuego.
Yeah, Thor maybe rebuilding Asgard and everything
By himself,
Yeah.
shirtless, with a
Yes.
hammer.
Yeah, that'll get the ladies in.
There you go. There you
That
go.
kind of ties into one of my Endgame theories. Brandy, what properties would you
Thor.
want to? Yes, shirtless Thor ties into everything, really.
Really?
What properties would you want to see that we haven't currently seen any iterations of?
I think Exiles would be really fun. It would
Ooh.
give us
Ooh,
an option
great.
to like
Yes.
bounce around some different places, see some versions of characters that we've not experienced. Like we could have another Peggy Carter cameo, only this time she can be captain.
That would be awesome.
Oh.
Yes, I think Exiles would be really fun. It would also be a great way to write out some of those actors that are done without having to kill them off.
Yeah. I think the kill off is kind of just a cheap trope, and that's why I think some of the people in Endgame might just exit rather than be killed off. You got anybody else?
Well, this kind of leads into what direction would I take it in, but maybe House of M would also be a really fun one. 'Cause
All
that's
right,
my
then.
other favorite besides Civil War. And
Hold
it would
on
give
to
us
that.
some more Scarlet Witch.
Yes, it would. Brian, what you got, man?
So I'm totally with Jermone on the Thunderbolts thing, and I would definitely go with the original idea of the Thunderbolts, where they're heroes, we don't know who they are, and then you find out that twist. Like I so remember reading that twist when that book came out, and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like it was such a great, one of my favorite comic moments ever. When Zemo turns around and he puts on, I have another mask, that whole thing. So great.
I remember, I remember when that book came out, like even before that, because they had introduced him in Incredible Hulk, and I was like, God, these dudes is like just a generic superhero team. What is going on here? And then that first issue of Thunderbolts dropped. I was like, oh
No,
my
they aren't.
God.
Yeah.
they finally, Marvel Legends, the toy line finally has a Citizen V.
Oh wow.
With this most recent line.
Okay.
Like, yes, must get that. Love it. And I love that whole run on the book. Busick and Fabian Nicchiesa's run on it, just great. But I would really love to see a Masters of Evil done well in some capacity. I don't want to see the whole movie about them, but one of my favorite arcs of all time was the Avengers arc in the early to mid 80s when the Masters of Evil wiped out the Avengers, took over Avengers Mansion, and looked like they were winning. Like it was great. But that again, Zemo and those guys. Like I just really want that to happen so badly. But as far as properties that might just make a good movie other than Thunderbolts, Young Avengers, I think it's about time for some legacy heroes.
I think they're
And I
going
think
that
we're
route.
gearing up for it. If that Hawkeye scene which I think is going to be the very first scene in Endgame, him with his family, and he's going to look around and they're just going to turn to ash, and he's going to be like, no, and then it's going to be like, Endgame.
It's literally just the guy who pops up in the corner.
But here's the
and
real
good.
twist. Hawkeye looks across the meadow and he sees a farm, And that's where Thanos is. And they just see each other from across the meadow and start running at each other. That's the beginning of the movie. That's the beginning of Endgame to me.
They're going to have that Rocky scene where they're about to punch each other, then opening credits.
Yeah, there we go. And they collide.
And Hawkeye manages to hold back the Infinity Gauntlet too.
Yeah, there we go.
Way to cheapen Cap's accomplishment.
Also, I really want to see something really stupid. So that would be Sleepwalker.
What
You
is
guys remember
that?
Sleepwalker?
Oh, geez.
So Sleepwalker
Yeah.
is one of a member of these creatures that I guess they kind of occupy the subconscious of the human mind and operate via the dreamscape. And when
Okay.
and one of them gets stuck in the head of this kid Rick Sheridan, and every time he falls asleep, Sleepwalker manifests and starts running around doing shit. I'm assuming he moves some stuff around in his apartment. Rick wakes back up. Sleepwalker, wherever he is, vanishes, and Rick's just walking around. And it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Would you do it as a horror?
I might because I think it was just really kind of cornball. It was introduced.
It was in the
introduced in the
90s.
early '90s, like
Yeah.
91, 92, like right when they were trying Dark Hawk out. They were trying Sleepwalker. They tried to have this whole new wave of heroes out. And Sleepwalker just got a mini series that tied into the Infinity War comic.
Okay.
So he's back. They're trying to do something with him at least. So who knows? Who knows what's possible? Also Moon Knight, but I'm always Moon Knight.
See, my very first thought was Moon Knight, but that is to me the perfect Netflix series. That's why I didn't go
Disney
movie-wise.
Plus.
Disney
maybe,
Plus
maybe
series
Disney
yeah.
Plus. Yeah.
I'd be 100% okay with that. Since Champions has been taken off the board, thank you, Mr. Jackson. The couple of ones I have, America Chavez.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I
I'd like to-
love that series.
I like to see
loved
America
it.
get a little bit of shine.
See,
you
I
know,
get
a
her
little-
up in my Young Avengers there.
Yeah, so you get her up in your Young Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Nova, Sam Alexander.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to keep
like that.
things in the cosmic realm, you go with Sam Alexander.
And we've set up the Nova Corps
Yeah,
already.
they
we
planted the
set Nova
seeds.
Corps.
We've
for it.
set up the Nova Corps, and they were decimated.
Yes,
Sometime before Infinity War started. So
That's the
it's
cold open.
prime time. Yeah.
Yeah, I still would like to see Thanos actually getting his hands on the Power Stone.
Oh,
that
my
would be
God.
the dope cold open. And Jess Drew, Spider-Woman. I would love start expanding the spider world a little bit. And that way you get, I guess, appearance by her best friend, who is Captain Marvel. And, get a little bit of maybe what Natasha was in The Winter Soldier is what Carol can be to the Spider-Woman movie. She, pops up for a third, 2/3 of the movie. All right, then. Dopeness. I like it, man. You alluded to House of M. So my next question being, what famous Marvel runs did the MCU build? So they built all the way up to, what do they call this, the Infinity Saga? I guess is what these first 3 phases have been. So let's say Endgame kind of resets things. What do you think they should build up to next?
I think House of M would be really interesting. It would also be an interesting end to Endgame. If it's like, oh, we can't fix this, we can't figure it out, and so Scarlet Witch just kind of wipes everyone's brain, and they kind of forget that that's happened. Don't think that's actually where we're going, but in my world where I get to write Marvel, that is what I would do. Because honestly, I think it gives you just a great opportunity to write out these characters without killing them, which I don't want to see. I know that that's probably what's going to happen, but I don't want to see half of the original Avengers, dead on the floor. I don't need those tears.
Yes, but Disney does need those tears.
know,
Those tears and those monies.
Give us your tears.
So would you just spend like an entire phase leading up to House of M, or how would you do it?
I think I would probably do the end of Endgame and have it go into House of M.
Okay.
Just because that's what we've seen up into this. The end of every movie has kind of led to the next phase.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay.
I think trying to wait and do it might be a little bit more risky. I think we're at a really good place to do something with Scarlet Witch like this.
Yeah.
Since she's lost Vision, she's lost her brother.
Okay.
She's basically alone.
All right. Yeah, have her a little bit teetering on the edge there.
Yeah.
All right then. For me, I mean, everybody was saying that lead into Captain Marvel, and I'm still sticking with it. Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think I would love to see that prevail and be the looming force over the entirety of Phase 4. Just paranoia and distrust running rampant throughout every single one of those movies. It resets all your heroes back to solo films because they don't know who they can trust to call for help, which puts them in their own playing ground, which makes them a little bit more inventive in how they're going to figure out how to beat whatever villain. You just can't call in Iron Man and Captain America to help out punch because you don't know whether or not they're friend or foe or Skrull or whatever the case may be. I would love it if if what Civil War did to split up the Avengers, if the paranoia of Secret Invasion is what still keeps them from being apart. Also, if we're going to bring in the X-Men, man, you might as well just start that run up to Avengers vs. X-Men.
Yeah, Secret Invasion, I think that would be a perfect post-credit scene to say, like, Endgame or one of the more recent, MCU films coming down. Like, just having, maybe one of these dead characters at the end, you see they're doing the autopsy and they turn into a Skrull.
Okay.
Revert to a Skrull or whatever. And it's like, oh, shit, what is going on here? Like, just to get that paranoia ramped up.
As long as it's Maria Hill, it's a Skrull. That's all I want.
Or even if they showed Nick as a Skrull. Because there's been that whole theory about the toast.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really good lead into Secret Invasion.
What's the theory about the toast? That Nick Fury, the real Nick Fury, never would have done dishes, so he must have been he was replaced in Captain Marvel.
I mean, that would explain his change in demeanor over the years.
Yeah,
What's the theory about the toast?
So in Captain Marvel, he says that he doesn't eat his toast if it's cut like diagonally, and then in Age of Ultron, he eats it diagonally.
He eats the fucking toast.
Oh, wow.
Son of a bitch, guys.
Do you really think they were planning that all this time?
I mean, maybe not, but
I don't think they planned it, but I thought they retroactively they're like, we can use that right there.
Yeah.
Happy coincidence.
Yeah. Do you lend credence to that theory?
Yeah, I do. I think Secret Invasion is that's my secondary one behind House of M. Okay. I think that Nick could be a Skrull. I think it definitely explains the personality thing, which I thought was really weird. And also maybe in Winter Soldier he actually died when they had the funeral in the car.
Oh, okay.
So that could be when he was replaced.
Wow.
Because there's even a little bit of a
You
personality
heard it here
change.
first, guys.
This shit just
Holy
got
cow.
real. Brandy Blanton
Chills.
from downtown.
Goosebumps.
He gave me flirkin' bumps.
Flirkin' bumps, yeah.
I like where you're going with that one.
Good.
What about you, Brian? Any runs?
Absolutely. Secret Invasion for the second big run. I think that if you want to, if by the end of where we're at right now is really going to just build everything back up, we've been building camaraderie. In Civil War is just sort of a bump in the road compared to like where we've been.
Yeah,
and then to tear it all down with the second big phase, overarching phase of the MCU. It also gives you time to bring in Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, and all those guys to really build towards something like Secret Wars in the big third motion of this whole thing. So Secret Invasion and Secret Wars would be the two big things I'd want to see. Other than that, though, most of these Marvel event things can go suck one because, like, I can count a lot of arcs that I just never want to see in the movies.
Okay.
I never need to see Fear itself turned into a movie.
No, you don't. No. You don't need to see Siege turned.
I don't need to see Siege turned into a movie. I don't need to see Civil War 2 turned into a movie.
I don't think. Although I would not mind Civil War 2.
They could do something with it.
If they could do something with it. I mean, basically they just stole the Minority Report premise, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's something there. They just didn't get that's not Bendis's finest hour. No. Although that is David Marquez's finest hour.
Oh, David Marquez
was
on
dope.
Fire.
Yes, so that art is what carries that. That's the only reason I bought that for the bookshelf is sorry, Bendis, I love you traitorous ass. But I guess down with it. So let's get into some Endgame and Infinity War stuff. Let's talk about everybody's favorite whipping boy of Infinity War. Let's talk about Pete Quill for a little bit.
Man.
Is he the reason this shit goes down?
I think he's a really easy target because he's the most obvious thing, but you can blame pretty much everyone for something. I mean, maybe it's Goose's fault because he didn't, he hacked up the Tesseract. I mean,
fucking cats. Yeah, I mean, they almost had it off. They almost had it off, and he came in there and fucked up, which was his own plan, which is a very well-crafted plan. But it seems like everyone wants to lay the blame solely at Pete Quill's feet.
Why didn't they just tickle Thanos?
What did you tickle mustard?
I think that might have been one of the.
Stop.
That might have been one of the futures.
One of the
Doctor
14
Strange
He's
million.
got so many wrinkles and creases. He's got to be really ticklish.
I don't think anyone's ever had that thought before.
That's the deleted scenes.
Coochie. What do you think about the whole Quill business?
You know what? I think it's kind of, and I was literally having this conversation with a friend of mine because she said she just watched Infinity War again, and she got so mad at at Star-Lord. I was like, that's not fair. It's not fair. Like, there were like a lot of different pieces in place for Thanos to even get to that point, or to get, he had to go to all these places, do so much stuff. Like he said it himself, it cost him everything or whatever. To put that solely on Star-Lord, it's just not fair.
Okay.
And I get it, the love of his life died, and you get emotional. Like, look at what happened with Tony Stark when he saw that Winter Soldier killed his parents.
Yeah, this is a frequent topic that comes up on the Cinnamon when me and Doug are talking, and somehow the talk about movies drifts into MCU. Inevitably, always bring up Star-Lord being the reason that all this stuff happens, and eventually Doug was like, "You realize the defense you use for Tony going berserk on Cap and Winter Soldier is the exact same thing for Quill," and I was like, "Yeah, he's got a point there."
Not only that, think about this though. What if Doctor Strange was looking at the 14,605 different outcomes? Maybe he foresaw that already.
Yeah,
He knew Quill
I
was,
think that's what people are.
Yeah, you know that like when he says there was no other way.
Yeah, this had to play out.
This is how it starts, and this is the only way we win.
That's craziness to me. Like they fucking had it off, man. How long did it take to get a fucking glove off somebody? The only other person with a glove that hard to take off is
Michael Jackson.
I was gonna say OJ, but we can take Michael.
He couldn't get the glove on. What are you talking about?
Man, if OJ got those stones, good lord.
Trial of Thanos. That's what the next arc of the Marvel Universe should be. The Trial of Thanos. It's like the glove doesn't fit, guys.
Let's bring in Space Cochrane.
Man, in the Infinity Bronco. Oh my God.
He's got that orange Bronco, a blue Bronco, a green Bronco. Let's switch gears for a second here, man.
The prosecution calls Corvus Glaive to the stand.
It's just the Kardashians.
Thanks a lot, OJ, for that one.
The Kardashians are just there as is. They were definitely involved in all of
They're
this.
the Watchers, actually. They are the Watchers. That's why those cameras are always around. Let's switch gears and talk about the Netflix characters, man. Are you guys ever disappointed that we haven't seen the Netflix Defenders pop up in the MCU? No?
No.
Yes and no.
I say no because I think it was two like totally different things. I think the MCU is so big that Netflix needs to be its own thing, and then go into Disney Plus and then be more of a thing over there.
Yeah. Okay.
And add to those shows. But
It's hard for me to picture.
yeah.
I'll say Daredevil is, I think, the best overall series that Netflix did.
Correct.
And it's hard for me to picture that version of Daredevil as a CG character running very fast and diving off buildings and then fighting somebody like the Ebony Maw. It's like it just doesn't gel. That world doesn't quite gel.
Only
So I have a problem
if
with that.
Ebony Maw was in a hallway.
Oh yeah. They got him in there.
He's screwed.
No, it's so done. So done.
He's just stuck in the hallway. Can't fit.
So do you think you guys are better than staying separate?
I think so. I would have liked to have seen more like Easter eggs connecting the two, but not necessarily a full-on appearance.
Yeah, that'd have been nice.
Yeah.
Because
They always it's just the incident. There's other stuff that's happened since then.
There were a couple newspaper headlines in the third season of Daredevil that suggested things that had happened before, because the Battle of New York one has been there since the beginning.
That's their primary frame of reference.
Yeah.
But there was another one that referenced an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in there. As well.
Really?
Yeah. It was like a blackout, like the blackout episode with the Inhumans in it. Was referenced in a headline there. So kind of an interesting Easter egg. It's not really that Easter eggy because I think the viewership for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't high enough to really connect those dots.
I think the only
I'm not sure there's much crossover there with those two audiences.
Yeah, I think the only other Easter egg they even suggested in there, I think Matt Murdock and Quake were at the same orphanage or something, or at different points in time.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, okay then. Rest in peace to Father Lanham. I wanted an Infinity War. Of all the shit that was coming down and raining hell down on Earth when they first invaded, I would have liked something to land in Hell's Kitchen and to see them show up to try to battle out something. Just anything. Just give me something, damn it. But they are going to need numbers in Endgame. So I'm still holding out hope that we get a little bit of Defender cameo action in Endgame. So Tony, let's get back to my man, Tony. In Age of Ultron, he has his vision, the vision that Scarlet Witch gave him of everybody dead on the heap that you referred to, that you don't need those tears. Do you think we are going to get some version of that vision in Endgame?
I don't necessarily see it now. Like, I know they envisioned that in Age of Ultron, but it seems like so much has happened since then. Like,
Yeah.
because I mean, even within that movie, Thor had those visions of what was supposed to be Ragnarok, and that was completely different from
Yeah,
what he saw in
it's
his
like,
visions.
the question is, was he seeing like a possible future, or was he just realizing his own deepest fears? And I think Age of Ultron, that was what was happening there. It was more of a glimpse inside of his head and his own personal justification for every decision he makes, not just in that movie, but in most of the movies, in terms of what drives him to try to protect the world and save everything
Right on.
by any means necessary. So, yeah, I think it's more of a metaphor than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I tried to rewatch it and see if I saw any like visual connectors that made me think Endgame, but I couldn't pick up on anything.
Nothing worthwhile. So I guess we won't see
Well,
Hulk lay it out.
Well, I think maybe it's possible you may see the Cap Tony like almost like a Kirk Spock Wrath of Khan moment, possibly.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. If you had to choose 3 to die in Endgame, I'll give you my 3. Captain America, number 1.
Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah. Die. Hopefully, like Vision, he finds a way to die twice.
Oh,
Ew.
jeez. How do you really
Downvote.
feel?
Downvote. Also, I think Hawkeye. I think Hawkeye can go on and bite the dust in this one, and I'll be A-okay with that. And War Machine. I don't see much happening with War Machine past this. I think we're not going to get much more Tony after this, and I feel like War Machine's story is tied kind of directly to Tony. You don't see a lot of him without Tony, so I think it's okay to go ahead and let War. I think they kind of
Bummer.
tested the audiences
He's gotten
there.
so shat upon, though.
He has. No one laughs at his jokes, his stories. I think they're testing the waters with
Poor
that whole Civil
Rhodey.
War business. Did we say?
I said poor
But poor
Rhodey.
Rhodey, man. Boom, you're looking for this, and they didn't know why he laughed.
Did they do a reverse Aunt Viv with Rhodey?
They did. They went from light skin to dark skin. I see what you're doing there. Yeah, I think those are the Cap, Hawkeye, and War Machine. I think if those 3 bit the dust, I'd be okay with that. What about you guys? You have any? Who are your top 3?
I don't necessarily want to necessarily see him die, but I would love to see some of these characters step down, like Cap, of course, yeah, because he has successors already. You got between Bucky
2
and
of them
Falcon,
right there,
and that would make for some interesting stories.
Battle for the Shield.
Yeah, Tony. Like I think it's a logical point for him to either if he doesn't die, for him to just like this is the end, I'm done. Maybe serve more as a mentor to like Peter Parker and some other maybe the next generation of heroes.
I see Tony refounding and being the director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I could and probably I'd probably say Hawkeye. Like he's just there. He's just there, basically, at this point.
I want Thanos to use the Reality Stone to make a giant bow and arrow, and then he uses Hawkeye as the arrow and just flings him into a brick wall. And the end for Hawkeye.
This makes me really sad because I love Hawkeye and he's like the one that I would protect with my life.
It
I
really
love
depends
Matt
on-
Fraction's
See,
Hawkeye.
I mean,
MCU's
See,
Hawkeye.
I really
ain't
wish.
that Hawkeye.
Yeah,
That
I don't know if they could
after
do
that
that take.
haircut. No, the haircut was the last straw.
Yeah.
I don't know if they could do that take on him now at this point.
They can't.
No.
No.
No, they've given him too much baggage.
Yeah.
Hate to call family baggage, but in this case, it really kind of is.
Unless the whole family moves into the apartment building or something.
But also, we're discounting the fact that Hawkeye's arrow shooting is going to play a big part in Ant-Man getting up Thanos' ass.
No, of course.
I'm
From
just
a
waiting.
distance.
I'm
I
waiting.
promised on the Facebook group, I was like, we're not going to bring up that topic. And
God,
here,
it's
here
the
comes
best.
Brian
It's-
Martin.
it's the
I
elephant in
laugh
the
at
room.
every single one. Like, it's
Child. You're a
it's
child.
unbelievable. Every single one, I'm like, this is better than the last.
I also laugh at all of them, so it's not just you.
I'm waiting for that moment, where Ant-Man, like, they do it and Ant-Man ends up in the soul world or whatever, and like somebody comes like, did you do it? What did it cost you? He's like, everything.
What 3 do you have dying, Brian?
I think, I don't want from a narrative standpoint, I think that I would not be surprised if Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor all died in this movie.
Oh, Jesus.
My working theory before, after Infinity War came out, was that once they have their hands on the Infinity Gauntlet, the only way that it will take all three of them combined to be able to restore what was lost, but they'll do it at the sacrifice of themselves.
Okay.
And it's going to be like, remember that scene at the end of Toy Story 3 where they're all holding hands in that furnace? That's what it's going to be like. It's going to be like Guardians of the Galaxy kind of, where they all had to hold hands to be able to wield that one Infinity Stone. It's like, well, Thor's there. That's a big help, but they're still going to be just all together wielding the gauntlet, and they perish, but everybody else rises.
Oh, wow.
Okay. What about you, Brandy?
This is really hard. I've been trying to think about it. I think I'm going to have to sacrifice Rhodey because he's not really, I feel like I could do without him and I would be sad, but he's not really served a purpose.
He doesn't
like
add a whole lot.
Well,
he doesn't.
they needed somebody to miss Falcon when he got dusted.
Sam? Oh, fuck it. He looked for Sam for about 10 seconds in the grass. Get some Whataburger now.
They did it for me. Great.
And it looks like
There can only be one black guy.
He was like, shit, good, I owed him money.
Who else?
And I think it looks like Loki's coming back. I really don't like Loki. I have a large hatred of him,
Wow.
and it's why I haven't seen any of the Thor movies because I hate Jack Kirby's Loki because I love the original source material so much. And Neil Gaiman also shares this literary critique, so I feel like it's valid. So if Loki comes back, I want him to die because when he died at the beginning of Infinity War, I literally cheered, and all of my friends looked at me like,
Oh, you're
because I was
being
like
that one.
laughing.
I'd like to see Kid Loki, though.
Yeah.
Oh,
When he came back as a small child.
Just get Will from Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And who else? Anybody else?
I'm trying. I really think Hulk is Bruce is going to end up dying in Endgame, not in Infinity War. Because I also feel like he served his purpose. He's not going to get a solo movie.
Yeah.
And I'm just not really sure where Hulk fits into the next stage,
There's always
unless
things to
Bruce is
say.
going to be a mentor to someone else.
All right, then. Cool. Let's run out of time, so let's wrap this up. Last question, real quick around the table. Are there any in-game theories that you 100% believe?
Well, I think we've been over.
I 100% believe that Cap will die, Tony will end up head of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Thor will leave to restart Ragnarok. I also think that Snap characters will be back way sooner than people think. I don't think I think it seems like the general consensus is late second act, so it's going to be the third act hurrah. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them back in the end of the first act in some way, shape, or fashion. And I think Nebula is the key to everything. Not sure how or why, but Nebula. Well, I mean, if you read Infinity Gauntlet, I think Nebula is going to be the key to everything.
Sure.
Anybody got anything else?
I think the Reality Stone is super important to however we solve this, considering how important red was in the second teaser trailer. It was the only color that we saw in the beginning, and red is the
Reality Stone.
Reality Stone. Yeah.
I think at some point they're cause I think, because, Thanos is now on the farm and he's, I guess, quote unquote, living a peaceful life or whatever. I think they're going to have to team up with Thanos at this point. And probably, maybe he realizes I should not have done this.
Yeah.
And maybe they have to team up with him to go back and, undo what he did.
Also, there's a hidden villain that we haven't seen and we don't know about, too.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think there's a bad guy in there that we're unfamiliar with right now.
Correct.
But I hope that Thanos does some farming.
I told you, I hope it opens with him frustrated that his rutabagas are not doing what he wants them to do.
Well, half the rutabagas in the world got wiped out.
Fuck, I gotta fix this.
He's like, I had 40 rutabagas, now there's 20. What happened here?
This year's bumper crop is ash.
All right, that's gonna do it. That is our all MCU episode, Avengers Endgame. Hopefully you guys got your tickets, man. We'll be talking about it. The Poprika Podcast proper will be back with myself as host and Jermone Jackson as host and Brian Martin as host. And our first episode back will be the Endgame review. Brandy, thanks for coming along and joining us in this ride. Hopefully you had some fun.
I did. Thanks for having me.
Us. Yeah, hopefully you're gonna come back when the show proper is on air. All right, you guys take it easy out there, and we will see you in a couple of weeks for season 12.